Alright, hey guys, welcome back to the video, and today let's talk about some secret changes that came in patch 1.2.4, but that was recently changed. Okay, so these changes, as we have gone over in a previous video, I did kind of tease them a little bit that we are going to go over them, but in this video we are going to go over them. So 1.2.4, it brought a lot of changes to various troops, damage of weapons, all types of different what would you call it, skills and all that stuff in between. But this was all under multiplayer. Single player didn't see any love when it came to that. But the devs, they did get called out by a player, not called out, but kind of like a player mentioned it, that he saw some of those changes in the multiplayer section, but he was experiencing it in single player. Here's what he says. Not only this, but can you tell me why these changes also apply to single player? Is it intended or a bug? The patch notes put these changes in multiplayer section. If it's intended, that it should be placed in the both section. Then the community manager responded and said, you are right. Some of the changes apply to single player as well. We moved them into the both in the patch notes and hotfixes threads. So actually, what's it called? Right over here, these patch notes have now been changed. So now we see the multiplayer change when it comes to troops, damage, health, and all that. But now we also see the both category. And these are the secret changes that just got changed. So if you did check out the patch notes for like the first week that it was out, you did not see these in the both category because they did not exist. Well, they did exist in the game, but you may not have noticed them when you were playing it. But now let's go over these, because if you mainly play single player, you might always, skip over the multiplayer section of the patch notes. I get it. If you're not playing multiplayer, why look at them, right? But the both section has to do, obviously, with both single player and multiplayer. Now that we have these, let's check out what really changed and what we can expect. Okay? Alrighty, let's get straight to it. So here we go. First one is increase the tendency of infantry troops to choose the attack direction which would cause the most damage to the enemy. There you go. So they increase the chance, or increase the tendency, or percent chance that the infantry troops will pick the right direction where they can do the most damage. Versus, let's say, if there's an archer group and then if there's a heavy cavalry group, they're going to probably try to go towards the archers instead of the heavy cavalry because they can do the most damage to them. Cool. Next, increase the offensive tendencies and reduce the defensive behavior of infantry troops against cavalry. Cool, made it so they kind of stay away from cavalry because they don't do as well. Then they updated the targeting calculation of infantry troops against cavalry, improving their decisions on who to target. Okay, again, just a lot of changes to infantry. Cool. And I'm pretty sure we did see these already in this both section, but I'm just going to go over it again. But a lot of these changes, like after these couple, all these are new to this section, if I'm not mistaken. Next, they revisited the spear bracing behavior on infantry troops to adjust several issues. So they're better at spear bracing now, which is like where you stop and you try to brace against a cavalry charge. Kind of pretty much countering the cavalry. So good. So it made it a little bit better. Then they slightly increased the cavalry's tendency to switch to a spear when charging. And that, I think, is the last of the changes that was already in the both section, but I did want to go over them again. But yeah, slightly increased the cavalry tendency to switch to spear when charging, so it made kind of like the infantry better, and also it made the cavalry a little bit better, but the infantry received the bigger buff. Now moving on to, like I said, kind of like the secret changes, the changes that were added later, right? Here we go. These are the ones right here. So the first, they modified the base damage of all staggering animations from 3 to the following values. So staggering animations, if I'm not mistaken, is when, like, if you get hit and then you kind of like do like a little, I guess, like a little move, a little dance move, like your shoulders move a little bit. Best way I can explain a stagger, right? So a kick is now not 3 but 2 damage. A small shield bash, and by the way, it's E to do it if you are on PC. I don't know what it is on anything else, to like kick and bash if you have a shield equipped, right? Small shield bash is now 1 damage instead of 3. Large shield bash now does 2 damage instead of 3. Two-handed melee bash, 2 damage, and one-handed melee bash, 1 damage. Cool. So now is dynamic damages instead of being 3 for each one. So all of them technically got nerfed, some worse than others, and obviously it makes sense for the smaller shield to do less damage than the bigger shield. Pretty cool. Next, they reduced the head and neck pierce damage multiplier from 2 to 1.5 for all melee thrust attacks. Head and neck pierce damage multiplier. Okay, so I'm guessing probably the head and neck pierce damage did enough damage to like one shot, but now with 1.5, it might not one shot every single person that might have a very good helmet on. Okay. Next, they introduced drastically increased attack penalties for non-cavalry units using mounts. Okay. This was in beta patch 1.2.5 that also came out today as I'm recording this video. They also reduced. They did also a what's it called? A huge attack penalties for. I'm pretty sure this might be actually the same thing. No, it's not. These are different. But for ranged, they severely made it very hard to be a ranged character on top of horseback if you have no riding skill. Until you reach like 100 riding skill, your crosshair whenever you're shooting a bow or a crossbow is insanely just like it's out of this world. Like the arrow can shoot anywhere really. It's very inaccurate, and I have a video coming out and probably link it down below for you guys. It's probably going to be out before this one. So yeah, just pretty much showing how the new bow and arrow penalties are, or new ranged penalties are on horseback. But going back to it, they introduced drastically increased. This is written. I think this is written on. Introduced drastically increased attack penalties for non-cavalry troops using mounts. Okay, so penalties are calculated using the riding skill for each troop. They're most pronounced when the riding skill is 0 and disappears at and above riding skill 100. Okay, so kind of the same thing that 1.2.5 did with ranged. A 20% penalty on both melee and ranged parameters listed below is applied at 0 riding, with the exception of the ranged accuracy penalty, which starts at 40%. See, it's worse. These penalties are then scaled down as the riding skill rises towards 100. Melee, decrease attack swing and thrust speed. Range, decrease reload speed, readying speed, and accuracy. Okay, so it looks like in 1.2.4, they kind of started doing this, and in 1.2.5, they kind of increased it even more when it came to ranged. Next, they reduced but pretty much what this means is if you try to go on horseback, but you have no riding skill, or if it's less than 100, you're going to pretty much incur a penalty to your attack swing and thrust speed if you're trying to do a melee weapon. And if you have a ranged weapon, you have decreased reload speed, readying speed, which is like the speed to get to like your most accurate aim, and then your accuracy, where your bow or crossbow decides to shoot at, that's inside your crosshair. Next, they reduced the minimum amount of damage required for a mounted charging horse to knock down a player from 13 to 10. There's going to be a lot more knockdowns now. Cool. That's fun. Then they just did several shield damage multipliers. So maces now do a bit more damage versus shields. Swords do less damage to shields now. 30% less damage from swords onto shields. Maces got, I think, what is that? From 5 to 7. That's like a 30% increase as well. About a little bit less increase to the damage. Then range weapons, javelins increased from, they doubled. Javelins will do double the damage now versus shields. Throwing axes have been decreased. Throwing axes used to be insane versus shields. Now that's almost a 40% loss in terms of damage. And then bows and crossbows increased just a tad bit, just a little bit. But what this means is, if I'm not mistaken, this is how much damage they do towards shields. Next, we have javelins. They increase the readying speed and release speed by a good amount, like 20-30%. Okay. And then for throwing axes, they increase the readying speed and the release speed, again, kind of same as the javelins, and reduce an accuracy penalty from 5 to 2, resulting in greater maximum accuracy. Okay, so they're trying to make it more viable. They're trying to make javelins and throwing axes more viable. You love to see it. But yeah, those are the changes that were just added to the patch notes, but it was already in the patches in the patch if you played patch 1.2.4, or if you're currently playing patch 1.2.5. This has already been in your game, but they just decided to update the patch notes to show, you know, all the changes, because this was missing. There you go. Hopefully that was informative, and I'll see you in the next one.